I would like to cue Ms. Belton and Parliamentarian Johnson for the roll call vote for option 1, oral testimony. Sorry, oral testimony.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown. Senator Stephen Bradford. Dr. Cheryl Grills.
Aye.
Lisa Holder.
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis.
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. John Tamaki.
Aye.
John Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Councilmember votes aye. We will return to Vice Chair Dr. Brown. Senator Bradford. Madam Chair, you have 7 aye or yay votes on this motion and 2 task force members not present.
Thank you. The vote was 7 in favor, 0 against, and 2 members not present. So that means the motion passes. Thank you. We will move on to the next item for consideration, which is item number 2, written comments. And we'll do the same process in which we did for item number 1. So for written comments, these are proposals and testimony submitted via the reparations email address. So again, the California Department of Justice has laid out 4 options, and there is a possibility that we can brainstorm additional options if necessary. I will now read the 4 options as proposed from the California Department of Justice. Option 1 would be a summary digest sent to task force members for review before each meeting, and staff, and that means Department of Justice staff, would make the preliminary determination of substance. So again, option 1 would be a summary digest sent to all task force members for review before each meeting, with the caveat that the staff would make the preliminary determination of the substance before sending over. Option 2 would be all comments, proposals, and testimony sent to task force members for review before each meeting, and staff would make no preliminary determination of substance. So that basically means that DOJ staff would just send everything that comes out of the email inbox. Option 3 would be to append these written comments to the written report. And then option 4 would be to post on the AB 3121 website. So again, I'll give the task force members some time to contemplate. Again, we can choose either option 1, 2, 3, or 4, or come up with a combination thereof. So again, I'll give some time for contemplation, and then once that is done, if anyone would like to entertain a motion, I will recognize you.
This is Lisa Holt. I have a point of clarification.
Yes.
With option 1, if the DOJ is going to make this preliminary determination as to how to summarize these written comments, if there is something that is very salient that we want more information on, like let's say we want the raw comment, how would we access that when it's in digest form?
Would the California Department of Justice, a representative, CUN, or Sarah would like to address that question?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. This is Xian Yang from the Cal DOJ. Thank you for your question, Member Holder. So just to clarify, you asking whether or not we'll be holding the original emails for member review once the digest sent out, And so I think that could potentially be one option, is that there would be some sort of summary and digest that is sent out. But if members were to want to examine the original, then you can reach out and we can circulate in some form.
Could it be done so that there is a hyperlink? You do the digest and then you hyperlink to the raw comment, so that if we want to explore further, we can just hit the link and do that.
So what about, just to sort of get into the nitty-gritty logistics of it, what if, so I think what I'm hearing is that there is a desire for a summary with an easy access to the underlying original document. So if we could always do a summary, perhaps in the body of an email, with a PDF of all of the emails and comments in their original form. Because the comments are coming in, it's not loaded onto any sort of data retention platform. Right now, the comments are just coming in to our public reparations email box.
Okay, that helps me. I understand the technology and what our options would be within option one. Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions for Si-Win on this particular line of? If not, I just want to return and ask if any member would like to entertain a motion on the second item of written comments.
Chair Moore, I do have a question.
Yes.
It's more in the nature of thinking out loud. Because task force members are, I understand, really, really busy. I think the summary helps. At the same time, what I'm hearing from Lisa Holder is that the task force does need to have a way of flagging issues and actually seeing substantive content and not missing anything. So we're looking for both efficiency, but also, identifying things that are really important. So would it be possible, would the chair be willing to work with the DOJ staff on this, or is that putting too much burden on you as chair in terms of option one, that together the DOJ staff would do the summary, provide the full PDF, but work with you to do some vetting of the comments that are coming in?
Thank you, Tamaki. Member Tamaki, to address that question, I did come up with my own ideas for the different sections. And so for section 2, my idea was to combine option 1 and 4. I'm kind of the opinion that I would like to see everything without the California DOJ making a preliminary determination of substance. But then also to marry that option with concerns of accountability for me, I wanted to marry option 1 with option 4. And so all comments would actually be posted to the AB 3121 website. I'm just putting that out there. That's kind of the idea that I came up with prior to coming to this meeting. That's kind of where I stand on that. Does anyone have any thoughts on Tamaki's proposal? Do you all or on my proposal?
It seems that the idea that you would go through all of them, we don't know what the volume is going to end up looking like. That may be an incredible burden for you as chair, along with other things that you would have to do. I actually don't see a problem off the top of my head with the merging of options 1 and 4. And I think that using or invoking option 4 also increases the transparency of the task force so that the public gets to see what we are seeing in terms of the range of comments. So I would propose a synthesis of options 1 and 4.
Thank you, Dr. Grills. May you translate that into a motion so that we can move forward.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we do a combination of options 1 and 4 as the way that we would handle written comments.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that for item number 2, written comments, we would use a combination of option 1 and 4. 1 and 4. Yes, 1 and 4. Which is a summary digest sent to task force members for review before each meeting. And staff makes preliminary determination of substance, and option 4 posts on AB 3121 website. Now I will go to Ms. Belton and Parliamentarian Johnson for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Sorry, actually, I made a mistake. I wanted it to be option 2 and 4. So but there is a motion on the table for option 1 and 4. So let's just continue with that motion, Parliamentarian Johnson. Okay, let's just continue with the motion. We're considering a combination of option 1 and 4. It's been moved by Dr. Grills and seconded by member Scott Lewis. So I would like to cue Ms. Belton and Parliamentarian Johnson at this time for the roll call vote for item number 2.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Moore. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Nay.
Chair Moore votes nay. Vice Chair Dr. Brown. Senator Bradford. Dr. Cheryl Grills.
Yay.
Lisa Holder.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Lisa Holder, I did not hear you.
Aye. Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis.
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki.
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Member Stepp votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown. Senator Bradford.
What are we voting on? I was not in the room.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. The motion on the floor relates to agenda item number 5, specifically Roman 2, written comments. The motion is that the task force is voting on is for a combination of options 1 and 4, where the staff would make a summary digest sent to the task force members for review before each meeting with a preliminary determination of substance, and to post all written comments on the AB 3121 website. The motion was given by Dr. Grills and seconded by Dr. Scott Lewis.
The current vote is what?
There have been 7 votes on the motion, 6 yeas and 1 nay vote.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Bradford. Senator Bradford. Madam Chair, of the members present, there are 8. There was 1 nay vote, 7 aye votes, and 1 member not present for voting.
Thank you, Ms. Belton. The vote was 7 in favor, 1 against, and 1 member not present. Therefore, the motion passes. Thank you. So the next item for discussion is item number 3, or Roman 3, in relation to public comment. So again, the California DOJ has already laid out 2 options for consideration, and we can consider additional options. So the first option is task force members receive public comment. Option 2 is that task force members receive public comment and staff incorporate a summary into the meeting minutes. And just a quick comment, the staff already did that for this past meeting. So if you look through the meeting minutes, you did see a summary in relation to public comment. Just putting that out there. So again, I'm just going to give just a minute or less for the task force to contemplate these 2 options or any additional options. As soon as someone would like to make a motion regarding Roman 3, please do so, and I will recognize you. And also putting it out there, I've done the work to consider these options, and I thought option 2 would be best, since also because it's already been done.
I'm a little confused. What do you mean receive public comment? How will we receive public comment?
We will receive public comment in the ways in which we receive public comment in the meeting. So during an hour, we would have an hour in each public hearing to hear public comment. So that would be the first option. But then the second option would be the same, but in addition, the staff would summarize that public comment and put it into the meeting minutes for each meeting that we have.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Somebody needs to go to mute. I keep hearing some rustling in the background.
And of public comment, how much time does an individual have under public comment?
See when you can step in. Thank you.
What?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. Our public comment, as contemplated today, is for 1 hour, and each individual has 2 minutes to make public comment. And that 1 hour is calculated by the actual amount of time that individuals are making public comment, not including any technical issues.
But again, individuals who are speaking, they are afforded. That's what it's important to me. How much time does the individual get? So they're getting 2 minutes. So you're seeing maximum 30 speakers in an hour.
That's right. During the public meetings, right now, each individual gets 2 minutes for 1 hour.
Got it. And wouldn't recording public comment be part of any minutes anyway? Most organizations I've ever been a part of, public comments is always incorporated in the minutes. So.
Would anyone like to entertain a motion for Roman 3 at this time?
Before the motion, can I make one other comment? I believe this is appropriate to raise here, but something was forwarded to us from the CJEC. They had a concept for community engagement. Among the things that they shared in their document was moving public comment to the beginning of public meetings. As opposed to having them just at the end, and also adding more time because, how does one fully develop an argument within 2 minutes? But at the same time, we can't be in public comment for hours on end. So I'm wondering whether or not, are we bound to always having public comment at the end? Is there a possibility of breaking it up and having public comment at the beginning of our meetings, and then 30 more minutes at the end of our meeting. And I say that because the public has the benefit of our agenda in advance and may have some things to say that could inform our deliberations specific to those agenda items. We don't get the benefit of that until the very end, but we will have voted on some things. So I'm wondering whether or not we could do a hybrid of public comment at the beginning of our meetings, public formal meetings, and at the end. And then we could go with then how those are handled in terms of option 1 or 2.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Brown, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I had problems with my equipment here, but I'm back. On this matter, if we're really serious about public engagement, I think we should put public comment at the beginning and set a time limit for it, and then we go and do our business.
May you please step in and clarify whether we need to entertain a motion to put public comment towards the beginning?
Well, I would offer a motion that we would have public comment at the beginning with a definite time limit set for it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Brown. Asiwin, can you please clarify for the task force? Because this is something.
I'm sorry, is the question for the staff whether or not public comment can be moved to the top of the meeting?
Yes.
Whether a motion is necessary for that to happen.
I made the motion.
Yes, I think that there is a motion on the floor, and I think the public comment can be moved to the top of the meeting. We will notice it in the same way as we do per Bagley-Keens within a 10-day meeting period for the next meeting.
And before we move on with the motion, I think we should give 3 minutes for public comment. I don't think 2 minutes is enough.
Agree too.
Okay, Member Holder, would you like to amend the motion on the floor from Dr. Brown? Or Dr. Brown, would you like to re-clarify your motion? Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lewis.
I make the motion. We include the
one moment.
3 minute time limit.
I believe it was stated earlier.
Hello?
You are recognized.
I'd like to respond to moving the period of public comment. I recall that there was a statement made earlier, I can't remember by which task force member, but that the public comment at the end was serving the purpose of providing involvement and incorporation because of the time of the day that people would be able to participate. Whereas, for example, if we have public comment this morning at 9 a.m., it'd be very unlikely that many people would be able to participate on a work day. Just want clarification on that, because I recall it being stated earlier. I don't remember who said it, unfortunately.
I propose that it be at the beginning and at the end. Both serve different purposes. At the beginning, to inform our agenda items so that when we go to vote on things, we have the benefit of community input. And at the end of our meeting, because at that point, people get to comment and react to things that we have decided upon. And I think that I could amend the motion that, because I've heard a couple of things added in here now, that the public comment be moved to half an hour at the beginning of our task force meetings and a half hour at the end of our task force meetings, and that the time be extended to 3 minutes rather than 2 minutes.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Assembly Member Jones Sawyer, you're recognized.
So as someone who routinely listens to public comment, there's a couple of things. If you have 300 people that want to comment, the reason that you do it at the end, so that you allow every individual, as many as you can, to talk. So that could last an hour, 2 hours. I've seen some go as much as 2.5 hours. So if you do 2.5 hours in the front, 2.5 hours in the back, it could be very unwieldy. So first, look at, is it just an hour in the front and an hour in the back, knowing that only public comment will be 2 hours. Some people, some public may look at that as limiting. And for example, I've been asked in my committee to only allow for me to summarize what everybody's comments, which I've rejected because I believe the public needs to have input in their own words. We also have something called Me Too's, which is someone comes on and says, I'm from Black Lives Matter, we agree with whatever, and then they get off, and then you can get as many people in. So when you think about this in a practical standpoint, if we limit the time, whether it's, if you take it up to 3 minutes, divide it into 60 minutes, that means you may only get 20 people to talk. And that means if you have 100 people that want to speak, that means that's 80 people you've cut off, as opposed to trying to do it all at the end. So I also would caution us that while it may seem like you're being more inclusive, some may look at that as being more restrictive, and them being able to even just coming in and saying, my name is so-and-so, I'm from such and such a community group, and we agree with what you're doing and coming up. So that's, whenever you mess with public comment, you've got to look at both sides.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair, you are recognized.
I know there are many views and positions on this. And we are dealing with a peculiar situation. We're dealing with a people who have been excluded. So why do we have to be like the old system? That's number one. And number two, if people are serious and passionate about this matter, as major as it is, they will make the sacrifice. We are making a sacrifice, the time that we spend. But the basic thing that putting a public comment at the beginning is says, you're really listening. And you not made the people an appendage at the end. I've served on the Board of Supervisors, redevelopment agency, years gone by. And that's the reason why even the Fillmore is no more. It's because of those meetings in the past, the people had left. And what did we end up with? Being jilted and pushed out because those public policy makers made decisions that were not in the best interest of the underserved. So if we're serious, really serious about reparations, this requires sacrifice. It requires thinking outside of the box. We know what has worked going on in the past has been exclusionary. And what are they doing nationally? Those folks who got the wrong agenda going. They're doing everything to suppress or deny participation and engagement. So I would hope that we would send a message to the general public that we're doing a new thing. We're doing a different thing. No, everybody will not be able to be heard, but at least those who do represent a significant constituent base, they will make the sacrifice to be there. And I hope that we will consider these salient facts if we are trying to maximize, optimize the engagement of people.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brown. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, I would like for Dr. Brown to restate the motion so that we can move forward.
My motion is that we would have public comment at the beginning, and we will set the time limit for the general public comment, and each person would be given 3 minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we will move public comment to the beginning of all public hearings from now on. We will set a time limit, and each person will have a maximum of 3 minutes. I will now move to Ms. Belton and Parliamentarian Johnson to cue the roll call vote on this matter. But again, we have to still vote on Roman 3 as to whether we would like for staff to incorporate a summary into the meeting minutes. But we'll continue to move forward with this particular roll call vote on moving public comment to the beginning of all public hearings, setting a time limit, and giving each person 3 minutes.
You took a pause in the meeting to take this vote. Is that what the plan is? Or
Yes,
did you want to finish? Okay, Ms. Belton, would you please call the roll with respect to the additional motion with respect to having the public meeting, a public comment at the beginning of the meeting and up to 3 minutes per person?
Thank you. Yes. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown, your vote.
Aye.
Vice Chair Dr. Brown votes aye. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Senator Bradford votes aye. Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Nay.
Dr. Cheryl Grills votes nay. Lisa Holder?
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Reginald Jones Sawyer?
Not voting.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer abstains. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis? Dr. Javon Scott Lewis, I did not hear your vote. I apologize.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki?
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Aye.
Councilmember votes aye. Madam Chair, of the 9 task force members who are present and voting, you have 7 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 abstention.
Thank you. The vote was 7 in favor and 1 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, the motion passes. Returning to Roman 3, would anyone like to entertain a motion for option 1 or option 2 or any other additional options?
Chair, I will move option 2. This is Member Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you, Member Montgomery Stepp. Is there a second?
I second. This is Grills. I second.
Thank you, Dr. Grills. It has been properly moved and seconded by Councilwoman Montgomery Stepp and Dr. Grills that the task force implement option 2. Task force members receive public comment and staff incorporate a summary into meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on this matter? Hearing no further discussion, I will turn to Ms. Belton and Parliamentarian Johnson to cue the roll call vote.
Yes, Ms. Belton, please call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Moore, your vote?
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Senator Bradford votes aye. Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Aye.
Dr. Grills votes aye. Lisa Holder?
Just clarification, this is for option 2, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis.
Aye.
Dr. Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki.
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Councilmember Montgomery Stepp votes aye. Madam Chair, on this motion, you've received 9 yay votes.
Thank you. The vote was 9 in favor and 0 against and 0 abstentions. The motion was adopted. Now we will move to the next item for consideration, which is Roman 4, telephone calls to the Department of Justice. So basically that entails members of the public calling the California Department of Justice in relation to this task force. Now we have to decide the ways in which we will, as a task force, deal with these phone calls. So again, the California Department of Justice laid out 2 options already for how we can weigh this procedural evidence, give the telephone calls, and we can also come up with our own additional options. So option 1 is a summary digest of the telephone calls are sent to the task force members for review before each meeting, and the staff makes a preliminary determination of substance. Option 2 is all comments, all telephone calls will be translated into comments, and those will be sent to task force members for review before each meeting, and the staff would make no preliminary determination of substance. Again, those are just the 2 options that the California DOJ has laid out for us to consider, but we can consider additional options. At this time, I will hold space if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns. After that, feel free to entertain a motion on this item so that we can move forward.
I have a question, Chair Moore.
Member Tamaki, you are recognized.
Thanks. What's the process that the DOJ has done now? Is that option 1?
Wynn, may you answer Tamaki's question, please?
Yes, Chair Moore. So the current option is the current draft circulated to the task force members is option 2. So a summary would be further summarized from what has been sent around so far.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And between option 1 and 2 is, do we want the California Department of Justice to make the preliminary determination of substance before they give us comments from these telephone calls, or do we want to see it all, essentially, in layman's terms? Or is there any other options that we want to consider? Would anyone like to entertain a motion at this time for this item number 4, Roman 4?
I entertain the motion that we adopt option 2, all comments sent to task force members for review before each meeting. Staff makes no preliminary determination.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you. It's been properly moved by Member Holder and seconded by Member Tamaki that the task force adopts option 2, all comments sent to task force members for review before each meeting, and staff would make no preliminary determination of substance. At this time, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, we will vote by roll call. I will cue Parliamentarian Johnson, who will then cue Ms. Belton.
Yes, Ms. Belton, please call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Aye. Brown, aye.
Okay. Thank you both. Vice Chair Dr. Brown votes aye. Senator Bradford votes aye. Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Aye.
Dr. Grills votes aye. Lisa Holder?
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer?
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki?
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Aye.
Councilmember votes aye. Madam Chair, on this motion, you have 9 members voting and 9 aye votes.
Thank you, Ms. Belton. The vote was 9 in favor and 0 against and 0 abstentions. The motion was adopted. We will implement option 2. Now we will move to Roman 5, task force member input. So there are 2 options that has been considered by the California Department of Justice, but again, we can come up with additional options. The first option would be to forward all emails in a reasonable time period. And the second option would be the DOJ would give a summary of these emails every week, every 2 weeks, every month, before every task force meeting. That's something that we could consider today in this meeting through a motion. But is there any questions, comments, concerns about Roman 5? We can just have a discussion as to if we do option 2, what would that look like? What would the timeline look like? What would we prefer? Or if we prefer option 1 as well. Any comments?
But just a point of clarification, what the DOJ is currently doing is option 2 before every task force meeting, correct?
Hi, this is Si Yun. So the DOJ is currently doing option 1. So whenever a member sends us an email to be distributed, we will generally distribute it within 24 hours. So I think option 2 would be, so we wouldn't make any substantive determinations and try to summarize. What we would do is collect all of the emails that we receive from task force members, collate them into one email, and then send them at the frequency that the task force members would prefer.
Yeah, and just putting that out there, my opinion out there, I think option 2 would be better maybe, maybe every week, every 2 weeks or so. Well, probably maybe every week, it depends, but it can get a bit disorganized if task force members are just sending articles whenever they see fit. With it being collected, there's a more organized, structured nature to task force member input. But I'm open to hearing everyone else's ideas about that.
So if we go with option 2 before every task force meeting, would it be sent along with the agenda, or would we be given more lead time to look at our other members' emails and interests?
See you in. Ms. Young, do you have any comment on that?
The DOJ staff has no comment on that particular issue. It would be up to the task force members within a reasonable time to give us enough time to collect the emails when there is, for example, a deadline, and when then that collection of links would be sent out.
Well, I'm fine having it before every task force meeting, but I think there needs to be several days lead time so that we can process and digest all of the emails.
Okay, great. Does anyone feel strongly about option 1, about the DOJ just forwarding all emails in a reasonable time as the emails come in? Okay, if not, Member Holder, would you like to translate your idea into a motion so that we can move forward?
Yeah, I move that as far as task force member input, we go with option 2, where the DOJ sends a summary of emails before every task force meeting, giving the members at least 3 days lead time before the meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second? A second.
This is Grills, I second.
Thank you, Dr. Grills. It has been properly moved by Member Holder that the task force implement option 2, a summary of emails sent before every task force meeting with a proper lead time of at least 3 days, and it has been properly seconded by Member Dr. Grills. Is there any discussion on this matter? Hearing no discussion, I will now cue Parliamentarian Johnson, who will then cue Ms. Belton for a roll call vote.
Yes, Ms. Belton, please call the roll with respect to Roman numeral number 5.
Thank you. Chair Moore, your vote?
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair Dr. Brown votes aye. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Senator Bradford votes aye. Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Aye.
Dr. Grills votes aye. Lisa Holder?
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Joan Sawyer?
Aye.
Assemblymember Joan Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki?
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Aye.
Councilmember Montgomery Stepp votes aye. Chair Moore, on this motion, you have 9 members voting and 9 aye votes.
Thank you. The vote was 9 in favor and 0 against and 0 abstentions. The motion was adopted. We will consider or implement option 2 of Roman 5 with the caveat that the summary emails will be sent before every task force meeting with a sufficient lead up time of at least 3 days. Now we will move on to the next item for consideration. Roman 5, reading materials before every meeting.
Roman 6.
6.
Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me. Thank you for the clarification. Romans 6, reading materials before every meeting. Ms. Yang, can you give the task force members clarification as to what these reading materials are? And then I'll move on to option 1 and 2.
Yes, Chair Moore. Came from task force member input, and the idea would be that once we move to substantive hearings from witnesses, that we would send the prepared written testimonies of the witnesses to the members and possibly a list of suggested bibliography of scholarly works on whatever the topic or theme of the day is. So that would be likely sent out before every task force meeting in the same manner that current materials are sent out and public emails and phone calls are sent out.
Thank you. So the option number 1 is for staff to send that suggested bibliography. Then option 2 would be for staff to send a prepared testimony of witnesses. Again, both of these options would be before every meeting. And then there's additional options that we can contemplate at this moment. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding Romans 6 before we entertain a motion? Okay. At this time, would a member like to entertain a motion on Romans 6?
This is Lisa Holder. I would draft a motion that combines option 1 and option 2 and gives a definitive timeline as to when, considering that this is probably going to be lengthy reading materials. So as far as reading materials before every meeting, I would move that we have a combination of option 1 and option 2, where staff sends suggested bibliography as well as the prepared testimony of witnesses, and gives significant lead time based on the volume of material.
Thank you, Member Holder. Is there a second?
Second that.
Second.
Thank you. It has been properly moved and seconded that the task force implement a combination of option 1 and 2 for Roman 6, with the caveat that there is a significant or sufficient amount of lead time for those materials, for contemplating those materials. Is there any discussion on this matter? Well, I'll just say thank you for the motion, Member Holder. In doing the work on considering options, I also came up with the idea of combining options 1 and 2. Is there any other further discussion on this matter? If not, I will cue Parliamentarian Johnson, who will then cue Ms. Belton, so that we could do a roll call vote.
Yes, Ms. Belton, please call the roll with respect to item number 6, options 1 and 2 combined as presented.
Thank you. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair Dr. Brown votes aye. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Senator Bradford votes aye. Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Aye.
Dr. Cheryl Grills votes aye. Lisa Holder?
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer?
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki? Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Aye.
Councilmember Montgomery Stepp votes aye. Madam Chair, on this motion, with the 9 members present, all have voted aye.
Thank you. The vote was 9 in favor and 0 against and 0 abstentions. The motion was adopted. We will implement a combination of option 1 and 2, with the caveat of having sufficient lead time for consideration and contemplation of the reading materials. The last item to be considered under agenda item 5 is item number 7, or Roman 7. So this Roman 7 is about a synthesis of evidence. So this would occur after each hearing. So there are 3 options that the DOJ, or California DOJ rather, has laid out for us, and there are additional options that we can contemplate. So the first option would be the staff drafts potential conclusions as a starting point for a discussion of conclusions to be adopted at the end of every public hearing. Conclusions adopted by the task force are then included in the respective section of the appropriate written report. So, for example, there could be a conclusion: evidence shows that housing segregation in the United States of America and the state of California resulted from the laws and policies of the United States, Californian, and local governments, and continues to contribute to the wealth gap between white and Black Americans. So again, with option 1, it would be the California DOJ staff drafting those potential conclusions as a starting point for a discussion of conclusions to be adopted at the end of every public hearing by the task force. So then the second option would be that the staff doesn't draft potential conclusions for adoption at all, right? And then option 3 would be that it would be us as task force members who would submit written conclusions to staff by a date certain after each meeting for staff to then synthesize our own individual conclusions and then present that synthesis at the following meeting. So then the conclusions adopted by the task force are then included in the respective section of the appropriate written report. Again, those are just 3 options that the California DOJ has laid out. We can contemplate a combination of options. We can contemplate an entirely different option. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns about the options as they are presented at this time?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding option 1 correctly. So according to option 1, the staff would draft something, but then we as the task force have the opportunity to edit and refine it.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, that's my understanding of option 1. CUN, just so we're all on the same page, can you come in and clarify?
Yes, that's right. So option 1 would be, depending on what the task force would like to do, the conclusions could be circulated ahead of time along with the meeting materials, including the testimony, the written testimonies, the bibliography. So based on those materials, we would, as a preliminary matter, put together a draft of conclusions that members would have ahead of time based on those written materials. And then potentially at the end of every meeting or at the beginning of the next meeting, once task force members have gotten a chance to appropriately consider these conclusions, then those conclusions would be discussed, edited, amended, or adopted in some fashion. And this would be a way of synthesizing after each meeting.
I have a comment. I'm uncomfortable with option 1 because I think a lot of this is about framing. We're going to be receiving this evidence, digesting it, and then we are going to be drawing conclusions from the evidence, but we also are going to be framing the conclusions for messaging purposes and to inform our ultimate outcome, which is the recommendation. So I think that is a process that needs to be task force led in terms of how these conclusions are framed. Maybe we need some combination of the 3.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair Brown, you are recognized. Thank you, Member Holder.
These proceedings, as regards evidence, do not go out unless we are privy to it and adopt it as the position of the task force. That's straightforward, it's simple. There should be no misrepresentation of what this task force decides and what evidence it is consulting.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I think you were in agreement with Member Holder in her statement that, being cautious of option 1 and what I'm hearing, you would want the task force to lead in terms of draft conclusions?
Yes.
Now, do you have any inclinations or preferences for option 2 or 3? And just to repeat, option 2, that implies that the California Department of Justice wouldn't have any input at all in regards to drafting these conclusions. Whereas with option 3,
I'm not saying they should have any at all. I'm saying we should see the finished product. as a task force.
Okay, great. So again, asking another question. So taking out option 2, because I think we understand that we would like the DOJ to be involved in some way, the California DOJ to be involved in some way. So looking at just high level, the differences between option 1 and 3. Option 1, in essence, the California Department of Justice would be leading, right, in drafting those potential conclusions as a starting point, and then they would come to us. Whereas with option 3, the task force members would be leading. As individuals, we would come up with our own written conclusions and send it to California Department of Justice staff for them to then synthesize those 9 conclusions into one major conclusion that we would then present at the next meeting. Does that sound like, in terms of option 1 or 3? I think I'm hearing that you would rather us lead rather than the Department of Justice, right, on this matter?
Yes.
Okay. So are there any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do have a comment.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a way to a middle ground here. And I'm sort of I really agree with what Lisa Holder just said, in that, and also Dr. Brown, that the conclusion is the part that goes out to the public and the press, even if it's half-baked, even if it's not framed in the way the task force wants. So I think that is a good strategy to have the task force vet that. But at the same time, the task force, we ought not to have to reinvent the wheel in that sense. So I'm wondering if the DOJ produces its findings, with respect to, let's take the example of housing segregation and the findings and the disparities resulting therefrom, but then omits the conclusion, which is really going to be worded with the input of the task force. Is that a way to both get the efficiencies of the staff drafts as well as the input and finalization by the task force? So there's a set of findings and then without the conclusion. And then that's it. I was wondering, Lisa, does that make any sense at all, or is that not a good way to proceed?
It does make sense. I think we would need to have some structured process, like even if there's a rubric where here are the findings based on the testimony, and then a blank slate for conclusions. Each task force member writes in their conclusion, something like that. And if we may also want to amend some of the findings, there should be an opportunity for us to be able to amend that. So I think, this needs some fine tuning, but I do think maybe a document should go out that says these are the findings based on the testimony, and then give us space to both change some of those findings or amend those findings, and space to draw our own conclusion. So,
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Brown, you are recognized.
Facts are facts. Data is data. All we should be looking for is the data. People are always going to have opinions about anything, but we just ought to look for reliable, truthful facts. It's left up to us to draw our own conclusions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Vice Chair Brown. Thank you also, Member Holder and Member Tamaki, for your comments as well. At this time, is it appropriate for us to entertain a motion regarding Roman 7? So I welcome a member to entertain a motion at this time.
I would move that we only would require the staff to give the hard data and facts. And the task force would draw the conclusions.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Brown. If I could reiterate the motion on the floor. So the motion on the floor is to not necessarily combine option 1 and 3, but the motion on the floor is for taking in Member Tamaki's comments, where the California DOJ would set up a number of findings, and then from those findings, as it pertains to Member Holder's suggestion, individual members of the task force would draft conclusions based on those findings for the California Department of Justice to then synthesize those conclusions and present them at the following meeting. Is that correct, Vice Chair? Is that the motion on the floor?
Yes.
So, okay, I'll reiterate the motion. There's a motion on the floor in order of synthesis of evidence for the California Department of Justice to give out a list of findings, and then for those findings, for the task force members to then contemplate those findings, come up with potential conclusions based on those findings. So then those conclusions will then be brought back to staff for staff to then synthesize into one large conclusion for them to then present at the following meeting. And then that conclusion will be adopted by the task force and then included in the respective section of the appropriate written report. Is there a second to this? Is there a second?
Yeah,
okay, Tamaki second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing that there is no discussion on this motion, I will now cue Parliamentarian Johnson, who will then cue Ms. Belton for the roll call vote.
Yes, Ms. Belton, please call the roll with respect to item number 7, synthesis of evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Moore, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Moore votes aye. Vice Chair Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair Dr. Brown votes aye. Senator Bradford? Dr. Cheryl Grills?
Aye.
Dr. Grills votes aye. Lisa Holder?
Aye.
Lisa Holder votes aye. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer?
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer votes aye. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis votes aye. Don Tamaki?
Aye.
Don Tamaki votes aye. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Aye.
Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp votes aye. Senator Bradford?
Aye.
Senator Bradford votes aye. Madam Chair, of the 9 members voting on this motion, you have received 9 aye votes.
Thank you. The vote was 9 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. The motion was adopted. Again, to restate, we will have mainly option 3, but whereby before that, the California DOJ will provide the task force members a list of findings. Then us as individual task force members will draft conclusions based on those findings. And then the California Department of Justice will synthesize those conclusions, individual conclusions, into one larger conclusion that will then be presented at the following meeting, and that conclusion will be adopted by the task force and then included in the respective section of the appropriate written report. We will now move to agenda item 6, which is the lunch break. We will break for lunch for an hour and resume the meeting. We're a bit early, but we'll resume the meeting at 1:30, the scheduled resume time. I am asking that you come back at 1:20 so that we can start promptly at 1:30 and announce when you are back so that we can make sure that we proceed with the quorum. Thank you very much.